Welcome to Men Answering the Heroic Call. I'm Tom Blanchek with Dean Patterson. In this podcast, Dean and I want to help equip you for this battle that we wake up to each day. The word heroic refers to actions or qualities that demonstrate great courage, bravery, and self-sacrificing love. These actions rise up during difficult situations in our lives, requiring a heroic response. No one goes to battle alone. As men of Christ, we answer the call together.
In each episode, Tom and I will share stories about the Catholic faith, truths about the Catholic faith that help us to become the men God created us to be. So journey with us. Join us each episode as we hope to grow in faith, hope, and wisdom, looking at the challenges in our life and answering our heroic call. So, Tom, last time we talked a little bit about prayer, and one of the facts or pieces of research that I saw since then, and this is all from the New Evangelization Project, Matthew Christoph, whose research I really respect and encourage everyone to look up, talks about how certainly less than half of men who say they're Catholic attend Mass, and even less and half of them pray outside of worship. And so prayer is something really needed. And we hope that we've made a difference by just dipping our toe in that water last time. But what we really have is a Catholic man crisis. And this kind of casual Catholic and slow fade that men have been doing is particularly troubling because their households follow men. We're more influential, actually, than women. One of the stats I saw is that when a woman converts to Christianity, 17% of her household will follow. If a man converts to Christianity, 93% of his household will follow. And so men have a role and an influence and a calling to lead their homes and to grow the Christian faith, because think about the implications of it. If we don't, where are the future priests and seminarians going to come from? What does it speak to the future of the church? And not only that, I think just salvation is at stake here. And so we want to talk today a little bit about the word evangelization, and that can be a very intimidating word, at least to me. At Heroic Men, we're fond of calling it handshake outreach. Men are unique, aren't they? And we want to make sure that we understand the makeup of man a little bit and why men resist and may be challenging to evangelize. But we'll talk a little bit about that today in a general sense, talk about the makeup of man and what is really required, I guess, of us in our calling to do a little handshake outreach. How does that sound?
You're right, Dean. And you know what? One thing we're always going to do, we want to be grounded in reality. And the reality is we're all born into a battle. But so we're going to give you some of the bad news, but then we're going to give you the good news. Bad news is, and we know this from working with men, that the percentages are quite high of men who don't even have a single other man as a friend. We know that a lot of them don't attend Mass. The percentages are like 55% of all men know less than 10 men by name. And when you think about that, over half the men don't even know 10 men by their name. So there's no relationship or interest. Only 17% of overall Catholics, attend Mass. The male suicide rates have went up 33% in just 10 years. That was from 1999 to 2019. That's just 10 years. And a lot of it is in isolation, because of isolation, loneliness, despair. In fact, one of the things they talked about, loneliness is worse for long-term health than alcoholism, obesity, and smoking 15 cigarettes a day. So can you imagine that? Being isolated and not having relationships is worse for you than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. Now, that's the bad news. The good news is, what's God calling us to do? And as Dean mentioned, handshake ministry. How do we reach out to other guys? What do I do? And that's why we're doing this podcast. Guys, we're just like you. We were really lukewarm Catholics at one point. And then when we realize that God is alive, he will play a part in your life, your prayer life, everything. But as Dean mentioned, a prayer life is essential to everything, especially if you're going to go out and reach out to other men. And simply praying, I always pray to Our Lady, Holy Mother, who am I to meet today? What am I to say? What am I going to learn? That I could be the face of Jesus to somebody. And it's real simple things, but I think one of the most simple things, Dean, and I know we talk about it all the time, is at Mass. Going up to one man you've never met that you see at Mass repeatedly and just introduce yourself. Asking what he does for a living or wherever. Just that greeting, because When we first moved to our town that we live in East Tawas, we were there for weeks, and then finally this one gentleman came up and introduced himself. Well, he's one of our best friends now, but he was the first guy that did it, and it was a few years. Now, how many other guys are out there and they just don't have the connection? They don't go to a men's group, they don't go to a men's conference because no one invited them. Isn't that right, Dean?
Yeah. One of the things that you make a really good point about in mass, befriending other men in the parish. There is a true issue there. I'm almost more concerned about the men not coming, to the parish. How do we find them? And we'll talk about that too, in terms of outreach. But one of the things our pastor is very fond of saying is take the 1% challenge. Go meet somebody today, one day at a time. We're going to make this a smaller community by meeting each other and befriending each other. And one way to do that is to sit someplace different. We've been in the habit of saying, hey, we always go to the same section. People always knew us as a family right there, you know, and now we move around a little bit. And I think at the rite of peace, we have the opportunity to say, hey, peace of Christ to you, brother. And it startles them a little bit, when you're that personal and you shake their hand and smile at them. And then after Mass, say, hey, I wanted to just say hi to you and meet you. I haven't met you before. And that's one guy at a time inside the church. They always smile back, you know, and hey, how long you been a member here? Or, and you'll find out a little bit about them and ask questions about them. I think people love to talk about themselves a little bit. Men in particular aren't used to being engaged that way because we kind of run and hide. That's just our makeup. So it's always a nice opportunity within Mass to make sure we meet somebody, every week, or say hello to guys we do know and introduce guys if you're talking to somebody, make sure they know each other. And it's just one way to build that community inside the walls.
Well, and Dean, the numbers are quite high for people who have left the Catholic faith, just stop going to Mass because it's easier not to go. And the numbers are as high as 85% where someone invites them back. And I'm familiar, I went to some training with St. Paul Street Evangelization. And simply by engaging someone and talking to them and saying, yeah, I'm from Holy Catholic Church here. Oh, I'm Catholic. And they just say, oh, where's your parish? Well, I haven't been in a while. Well, come on back. Come join us at Mass this weekend. Believe it or not, the numbers are as high as 85% who people come back simply by a simple invitation. And you and I know this too. So even men who are already rooted in the parish, but like, I'm not going to go to that men's group or I'm not going to go to that men's conference. That's just not for me. I'm going to Mass every week. I check the box. I'm good. And you know that a personal invitation. But then also, we have a guy, the same guy that greeted me, Bill. When we have a men's conference like in Saginaw, it's about an hour and a half away. Bill is the community organizer. I can guarantee I got 10 men going plus, as many as 15, because Bill will call and say, hey, why don't you go with us? Come on, why don't you go? Okay, all right, Jim's going to pick you up at this time. And then afterwards, we stop somewhere, we have dinner, we spend some time together, have a beer, pizza, whatever. So it takes that person, just an invitation. It's as simple as an invitation, isn't it, Dean?
It is. We talked about what resources we might lean into. And one of the things we do at Heroic Men, I don't know, can we see this? Book No Man Left Behind, just the concept of no man left behind. Let's talk about brotherhood, guys, and let's just say, look, God made us for relationship with Him and others, and it's something that's built into us to be brothers. And we have something unique when men bond with other men, but not all men are created equal, right? We're all in different places. And one of the things I like about No Man Left Behind, the reason I want to bring it up, is that they have a little matrix that is in there that talks about where men are at and maybe what the right response is. I think it's always the right response, Tom. Easy to just shake somebody's hand, introduce yourself, invite them back to Mass as you get to know them. But men at times have left the faith for a reason or never engaged at all and need God in their life. So there's 5 different types. I might get them wrong here, but men who have never engaged and really do need God. And we can pick them out. They might be out there somewhere and living a lifestyle that just doesn't work. And you can see how that's going to end, and not well. There's unengaged Catholics. These are the fallen aways, and there are many of those, right? Those are the ones we want to invite back and befriend. There are the mature Catholics. How do we keep them from falling away? And maybe something that you might do with mature Catholics, if you're trying to create a brotherhood, is going to be different. Maybe a Bible study, maybe a men's small group that you pair them with a variety of other brothers. There are hurting men. A lot of men out there are wounded. One of the things I just did recently was wrote an article for our Heroic Man magazine, and I interviewed Catholic women. And I said, what do you need most from a godly man? What do you want most from a godly man? What are some of the obstacles? And what can you bring as a woman to a loving relationship that's God centered? And boy, the information, the women love to talk. It wasn't blaming and shaming, though. It was really good. But one of the things they said is, look, the rise of feminism has really created some obstacles. Women wanted to be equal. Well, now they are in the workplace for the most part. And it's really created issues for men as a stumbling block to take up the role that, we're meant to play in various ways in that relationship. And it's challenging, and it's creating issues in the marital space as well as others. And so there are hurting men, and that doesn't always equate to what I just described, but in many cases it does. And you need a high trust environment and a place where guys are really committed to the mission of I guess, handshake outreach and building brotherhood. And so I wanted to bring up the No Man Left Behind book, because that is really a foundational piece that we use as we approach and support conferences and support the development of men's groups out there as a really good strategy to bring men into, Christian brotherhood, make them solid in their faith, maybe to get to model off one another as they seek and grow. I know it's been a big part of my faith journey. 30 years now in a small group, which was an answer to prayer, talked about in a prior episode, and it's just something that we're now looking at as a given in our life. I say I with my brothers weekly. I want that for every man, because it's made all the difference for me.
Well, and Dean, when you mentioned about how do we reach out to the men, is sometimes it may not immediately be inviting them back to mass. Maybe it's some of your neighbors, just having them over. Maybe you have a bonfire. Maybe you have a cigar night. We done that. I'm blessed to live on the water here. My neighbors, and I have a number of neighbors who don't attend mass or aren't affiliated with a church. And so we had an Ash Wednesday. We met and had a bonfire and had a cigar. But in those situations, as you get to talk to guys and, hey, what do you do for a living and these kind of things, or I'm retired and, I do a little work for Avimir Radio, I do some mission work. I don't say much unless they're interested, because they don't really want to, nobody wants to know what you know until they know how much you care. It really amounts to that. But in those situations, there's another thing you can get right on the website with Heroic Men. They're just business cards, got a QR code on one side to put the free Heroic Men's app on your phone. And I'll just say, hey, I do some work for Heroic Men. I volunteer for them. They have an app and it's free. Instead of going out on social media, go to the app, click into one of the stories, especially go to Be a Man with Father Larry Richards. And I said, just start watching and then just give them the card. And you know what, guys? You did everything that God asked you to do. Then it's up to Him. But those are simple things that you can do. Have a pizza and beer night. We did this. I'm in an upper room and I had a bunch of guys over and we watched that movie, The Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare. We had 15 guys. We had pizza and beer, and then we talked. And we talked about the risks that were taken during war that changed the outcome of the war, and about risks we need to take. And we're not even in peril. We're just afraid to talk to another guy. And it's so simple, and it's repeated invitations. Just because you ask a guy once to go to a men's conference or whatever, just reach out again. But first pray about it. Lord, open his heart that he would come. But keep asking. It's like advertising on TV, Dean. Why do we see the same ad like 50 times? Because it takes that many times for us to be open to it. I pull my phone out, I click on the Heroic Men app, and I just show them what's in it, and that's it. Because I've told the guys about this app like 10 times in my men's group, and then we watched the Be a Man series with Father Larry, and the guys said, now where do I get that app? And they put it on. So guys, we just got to be patient, because you know what? That was me. I was that guy.
Yeah.
And so be patient, pray for them, and don't be a sign seeker. Just pray, and the Lord's like, okay, Lord, I'm leaving it with you. Whatever you want me to do. But I can tell you too, and you know this, Dean, that when you're the most uncomfortable and you don't want to say something to a guy is when God usually acts, you know, and it's like crossing that chicken line. And guys, it's not a loss of life or anything by inviting someone or talking to someone. And it doesn't mean you may accept their way of life. They may be living with somebody. Don't worry about that. Just talk to them. Just invite them. It's that simple, really, isn't it, Dean?
Yeah. We're getting very specific here. We want to save some of these wisdom, these little pearls for our next podcast, as we have some very specific ways of evangelizing for ideas. But these are great, and I think one of the things to say about the makeup of man is just what you said. No Man Left Behind, the book, talks about, hey, be prepared if you're in the mission field of trying to evangelize men. You're going to be disappointed and frustrated because it could take 10 years to take off. And they're not wrong. I mean, that's based on, true stories, because men just don't take it up right away. But be persistent if you're watching this, and there is something that is absolutely true about this ministry to men, and that is it always fails if you don't have a leader. We want to always be cultivating leaders. If you feel like you're one of those leaders called to it, reach out. I think we have some resources. There's many out there to help you form up a small group or to lead a ministry. Pastors certainly have a role to play in that, as do others in your church and your parish churches. And yet, I think what's really interesting is to see a man on fire who has nowhere to go. If there's nothing out there for him, and that's happened all too much, and eventually the fire is quenched, and he just moves on in life. So what we want to do is make available. I guess the idea is to persist, to keep trying to push something out there, an idea that you're going to have a men's ministry. Love the pizza and beer. The pizza and beer thing speaks to every man, doesn't it? And I think the pizza and beer diet didn't work for me very well. I'm going to have to figure that out again for my own weight loss, but it sure is fun to go to them. And I think of the men that I've met over the years and how much that's a comfortable way just to talk. And then I would say this too, and this is the point of view of heroic men, that small groups and brotherhood. And I've been in a lot of parishes, and there's nothing against these men's groups, but the men's group's going to do a fish fry. Hey, the men's group's going to do a raffle, meat raffle usually. Got to have meat. And maybe the parish festival, the guys are the ones underneath it all that are kind of walking around selling tickets and doing that thing, and that's great. What we also want to remember or keep in mind or do first is that we're trying to create new missionary disciples for Jesus Christ, and based on that, let God do the work. That from that, if we can just make sure that we keep Christ centered in some respect, maybe small to start, and then grow. And you mentioned the Father Larry series. There are a million resources out there to help guys study their faith and grow in it. My own personal group, we bought a paper saddle stitched book that was all about apologetics, and it was like, why are we Catholic? What does that mean? Why I'm getting challenged on Mary? What's that all about? And it was kind of a very Cliff Notes version of the Catholic faith, and that was our start. And from there, we went and bought a book, and then we went and got a video, and we've been doing this now a lot of years, decades. And it's important to start where you're at, I guess. Find guys and make sure we match. What level and what interests they have, but always start with the idea that Jesus Christ is our reason for meeting and growing in faith. Has consequences if we don't. And as men, we're called to be leaders in our homes, certainly lead in prayer, lead, in our example. And beyond that, even if you're not married, you have a role to play in this. And so that's how I would also add to what you said, Tom. It's very true, though. You have to ask 6, 7 times personal invitations, and it's an over and over again process. And finally, you get a guy to say yes. And it's not uncommon to have that kind of challenge.
Well, and Dean, another thing is, let's say Dean's been involved in his men's group for a number of years. Guys in the parish who don't go, they will look at you like, oh yeah, he's that holy guy, and I don't really want to get involved in that. That's why you have a bonfire night. That's why you have a pizza and beer night and movie night. Because all of a sudden they realize, hey, Dean is just a regular guy just like me. And then he wants to find out, why is Dean so happy? Why is he always so joyful? I mean, he's lost a lot of his vision, and look at the work he's doing, and it doesn't matter. So you have to let them know that, hey, I'm just a regular guy like you. But once you've had that encounter, once you realize that I can actually have a relationship with Jesus, that he will speak to you, and that this life on earth, this battle that we're in, we're soldiers, but the eternal rewards are priceless. All the rejoicing in heaven over one sinner turned back. That's why we do this. And so it's important, man, because the minute your fire gets lit, and I know Dean and I have talked about this before, and you realize who Jesus is, God the Father, our Holy Mother, you just want to conquer the world. But being able to step back and spend more time in prayer and ask the Lord, what do you want me to do? And I'll tell you, if you pray If you really pray, who am I to meet today? What am I going to say? Where am I going to? When I walk into Walmart or wherever I go, I always run into somebody, and the Lord will take care of that. And once you do it a couple times, it gets much easier. You're just looking like, okay, Lord, who do you want me to meet today? And
You know, not,
sometimes they're bringing you something that's going to help you, don't they, Dean?
yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Tom. I love what you're saying. And that for a long time, and I'll say a lot of guys are here where I heard that message, pray before you get on the plane. I used to travel a lot for a living. Hey, before you get on the plane, pray about who you're going to sit next to and be open to a conversation about Christ. And then I'd start, the enemy would start going, yeah, but what are you going to say? You got nothing. And I think a lot of guys feel that way. In that case, Tom, what would you tell them if they're just starting out? Let's say, you
I would say talk to them about why you believe. Why do you go to church? What has God done in your life? Did something happen like, oh my gosh, I prayed and my prayer was answered? Share with them your story. That's the one thing every one of you have. Everybody listening, you have a story. God has done something in your life and you encountered it. And that's maybe why you're listening right now. Just share that. It isn't that technical. I always thought like, well, I can't remember a lot of scriptures and those things. I'm getting better at it. It takes me a long time, even like praying the rosary. I had to use the brochure for a long time, but I got it. Once I got it, I got it. And one thing that struck me when we were preparing to talk about this today is think about this, gentlemen. From the book of Hosea, chapter 4, verse 6, my people die for lack of knowledge. We don't want anybody lost. God has already won the battle. Jesus has already won the battle, but the enemy's taking captives, and we need to free those people. And a simple invitation and a simple invite, or as Dean said, sharing your story with them when they're ready. I usually wait until they ask me because a lot of the time they don't really want to hear much. But the more you ask them about, tell me about your children, how's your son doing at college? You know how good it makes you feel when someone asks you about your family or your life. And once you listen to them, then they're wide open. They're usually wide open to hear what you have to say. Or an invitation. Hey, why don't you come join us? We're just having a bonfire night. Or we're having a cigar night, whatever it is. Then from there, hey, why don't you try joining us for, we're doing a men's group thing this night. I know, Dean, your group, you guys have been doing this for years and you're great at it. You've had like a father-son fishing night. You even played bingo at a assisted living place. Tell us about some of those things.
Well, yeah, and those are, fond memories. But, backing up, I mean, the makeup of man. We love the outdoors, I think, as a rule. We like adventure. We're different from women, guys. And one of the things that I just had as I don't know if it's a brainstorm or what it was, look, I love to fish. I love being on the water, looking at it. If I catch fish, it's a bonus. I'm at a place now where if, I go fishing, I got to have a buddy to take a blind guy fishing just because I'm, going to need help. But my son was probably about 10, and I was still driving at this point. But I circulated in our parish, and I said, guys, let's go rent. There's a big walleye lake about an hour and a half from here where I live in Minneapolis, and they have these monster charter boats that can fit about 120 people on them. And they captain it, and they take you out, in the evening and maybe during the day too. Anyway, you charter that thing, and not a very big cost when you spread it over that many. And I just started saying, hey, father-son fishing for an evening. What do you think, guys? And we just had guys inviting each other to do that. Very low risk, very high reward. And they all had to go get their own transportation up there, their own food and beverage, bring a cooler for yourself. And we had an amazing response. And I regretted, it was not meant to be, exclusive. We just couldn't get to everybody. I didn't know everybody in the parish. And it was one way for me to meet new guys and just get an idea out there. And we were just swamped, with guys that wanted to go. And that was a lot of fun. It worked. I didn't follow it up with anything. I wasn't good enough yet to think through, okay, what's my opportunity now with these guys? I don't even think we led a prayer when we got on the boat, Tom. We just went out there, had that experience, and guys went their own ways after that. But it just shows you that men are hungry, I think. In this particular case, these are men attending church that had sons. Sorry about the daughters, they didn't come. But, the idea is that we're targeting men. That's what we're called to do. And even at that early stage, that's something that was in my makeup, I guess, to do that. You mentioned the bingo thing, and ultimately, I think every men's group gets to a place where we know serving others and interacting with others in the name of Jesus is a powerful thing. It was on me, actually, in our group of 7 that's been together. We agreed, in one of our meetings that should be something we do and bring our kids with us. Again, managing the house, leading the household. So we all had little kids, and we said, all right, let's just call around and see if any old age homes need volunteers. And one place was very open, had us come once a month on a Wednesday. They were playing bingo anyway, so we just slid right into that, and we took over for the staff. And we even had the kids calling bingo or sitting at tables with the residents, moving pieces if they needed that help. We brought the prizes; they didn't have to pay. That was something that was new to them too. And man, that was successful. We still tell stories and howl about some of the situations that happened as in the 8 years we did that. And regrettably, we all became so busy as fathers and employees, in some cases employers, that we just couldn't sustain it going forward. But after 8 years, we had to quit it. But just was an amazing imprint, about the whole idea of service in Jesus' name and what it did for our kids and families and our brotherhood too. When you serve with brothers, we had at our parish. I don't think they do this anymore, but we had, I don't know, a collection of about 10 guys who just said, we're going to do the car clinic once a month. If you got a car that needs an oil change or something that we can do in the parking lot of the church, bring it. And we'll tell us ahead of time. We'll have enough oil. We'll have they were mechanical. I don't know if they were professional mechanics, but they just did that for people in the parish who came up. It's just part of the community. And men do this stuff, if they're in a good place, they want to serve. I think it's a calling for all of us, at some point to be in a service capacity using the gifts God's given us, you know. So
Well,
those are the
and
two stories.
as you said, Dean, if an idea comes to mind, pray about it, and then just do it. If it's good, if it's loving, if it's kind, if it's going to reach out to people, why not? Don't think like, well, that seems kind of weird. Well, pray about it and ask him. If it keeps coming to mind, find some men to help you and just do it. I mean, that's great for 8 years going in and playing bingo and having children in with those people. What a difference you made in those lives. And so it's simple things like that, guys, that we can do. It's not technical. You don't have to have a PhD in theology. Just get up and be open and extend hospitality. It's really that simple, isn't it, Dean?
It can be that simple. I think one thing I'm very fond of saying is, I'm just bringing my 5 and 2. Let God do the miracle. I'm just a guy, and if I bring my 5 loaves and 2 fish, let Him multiply if it's His will, and I don't have to apologize to anyone. I will say this too, and just you get this idea, then you also get the other side, the other voice that goes, yeah, but you're not quite, you can't do that. You can't, you're going to encounter this obstacle or that, because the enemy does not want us to succeed in any way, shape, or form. And they're out there. I mean, if Satan took a third of his angels with him to oppose God, that's a lot of angels. That's a lot of demons now. And they're everywhere. They got good game tape on us, and they know where to pick and point and you know, show shame and blame. We need to overcome that. We have a very powerful God. And grateful to God that I guess I'm not going to tell you for a minute I've mastered that. I'm far from it, but I'm trusting more. I'm grateful for that. And I think when we do that, we give God our 5 and 2. We just let Him multiply, and we move on and move forward with it. So, yeah, I mean, these are I don't know where we're at here, but I think, Tom, what we've talked about today is there's never been a bigger man crisis and a big fade in the Catholic
Yeah.
faith, men just becoming casual Catholics. And we are absolutely essential in our households, in our lives, in our circles, to be the men that God called us to be, to answer the call. And it can be, as we've talked about, I hope anyway, simple. We need to trust Jesus is who He says He is. And if we're not there, that's the first place we start, I suppose. Shore up our own beliefs. You can't give away what you don't have. And trust that God will put you in a position to evangelize when the time is right. But it doesn't need to be. I think I've loved what you've had to say about how it doesn't need to be hard. We just step out as men, as leaders, and good things are going to happen when we do that.
Well, and Dean, I was always under the opinion until I spent time learning unbound prayer and praying with people. We look at other guys and we go like, oh, look at that family. They got nice cars. They've all went to college and education. I'm gonna tell you guys, everybody's got junk. We all have junk because we wake up every day and it's either the world, the flesh, or the devil trying to plant these things in our head and the lies. And so that's why, regardless of the person, just reach out to them. And I always look back to in my life because I was very lukewarm. Is from Luke chapter 12. Jesus said, I have come to set the earth on fire. How I wish it were already ablaze. All right, guys, all you got to do is go up to a guy and greet him. You may be the spark that ignites the blaze. It's that simple. It isn't, and especially if you're praying, who am I supposed to meet today? When you're walking to Mass this weekend, just say, Lord, highlight one guy I need to go over and just introduce myself to. It's just that simple. And the things you find out about people that you had no idea. And let's face it, I'm the worst at it. I pray and renounce judging, evaluating people, is just meet them and talk to them and just try to say, Lord, let me just look into their heart. Let me listen to them. Boy, God is so patient. Whatever you're going through, He's very merciful and He's very patient. In our next podcast, I'm just going to highlight it, Dean. You're not going to want to miss it because we're going to talk about practical evangelization. That might sound a little clunky, but we have some very simple things you can do, fun things that will have eternal rewards. I mean, great simple things that Dean and I have learned over our years, and I think you're going to love it. So don't miss our next podcast, Practical Evangelization, and we'll break it open in a way, and you're going to learn some things, and I guarantee you will be doing at least one or two of the things we suggest to you. And hopefully the things we shared today, you'd start doing. Even if it's maybe it's at the grocery store or the gas station, you see a guy that you've seen before from your parish. Hey, I'm sorry, I've never met you. What's your name? My name's Bob. Whatever. And it's those simple things, isn't it, Dean?
It is. It's very interesting. We've covered a lot of ground today. At times it's been a lot of practical things too, but I think as men, we need to be action oriented. We need to take charge, take a leadership role, all that, but it's much easier for God to steer a moving ship than it is to get it moving. And if we're willing to take a step, I'm so confident that God will meet us there. And so that's a statement of faith, but I think it also tees us up to say, men, join us next time. We'll talk about practical little things you can do, low risk, to just get started and watch what God does. And I think that's been the most amazing thing in this walk and journey with Christ is when speaking for myself, again, a little testimony, and I'm not the only one, but when I've stepped out in faith and taken a little risk in a variety of ways, I'm always amazed how willing God is to meet me there and how it goes. So yeah, man, come back next time. I'm grateful that you came today. Tom is too, I'm sure.
Yes. Thank you, Dean. Thank you, gentlemen. We can't wait to talk to you again.
All right.
Why don't we close in prayer then, Dean?
Thank you, Tom.
In the
Yes.
Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Holy Mother, Ark of the Covenant, sweet Virgin Mary, Holy Mother of God, my mother, my queen. Saint Joseph, husband of Mary, servant of God, true man, just man, terror of demons. We come before you today and we ask each of our listeners, their families and friends, please cover them in your Son's precious blood of protection. Fill them with irresistible grace. Give them a thirst for your Son Jesus, that they would come to know him, love him, and serve him in this world, that we all one day may adore and glorify him forever in the next. Amen.
Amen.
Don't miss our next podcast, Practical Evangelization.